All right, and it looks like we are live on all of our places. So
My
I
bang, my bang going
am
through. Okay, sorry. I can
bang.
hear me
You're like, I like don't just hide the bang. No one can see my real hair.
now.
I'm Thermo Cosplay. I've been cosplaying for well over a decade now. And to this is one of these sides is Jinx cosplay somewhere.
Somewhere. Somewhere there. Oh, hi.
And Jinx has been cosplaying for 2 decades.
Yes, I have. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Jinx Cosplay. I've been cosplaying since 2001, so that's about 23 years. About the average age of cosplayers I meet these days, which is great. It's great. It's that it keeps going. And I have been on a break, a Cos Talk Live break for a while. And I've also just talked to like 800 people the last couple days at a gig. So I am like, blah, blah, blah. But this topic is my expertise. So I am back for a bit. I'm based here in Mesa, Arizona. I am cosplaying as Morgan today from Darkstalkers. And Sam Thermo is
Merida, and I've got my Merida dress from Box Lunch.
Merida from Brave. We've
Merida
got some
wearing
interesting
Merida, just
topics.
Meridas everywhere.
Merida from Brave. So we've got some interesting topics today.
Yep. And so today we're talking about taking cosplay international. So we're going to talk about traveling international from the US specifically. But we can talk about like what it's like leaving the US, going through a port of entry to another country, and then coming back to the US from a port of entry into the company, into this country. So we'll talk about like what to be aware of, what documentation you'll need. We'll also talk about when you're traveling with costume, things that you may not consider, and how to what costumes you should choose depending on where you're going, what props you should bring, stuff like that. So we're gonna go as much as we can in an hour, as much as we can. But the big thing that we wanted to primarily focus on is the one thing you absolutely need if you're traveling internationally is a passport. So always make sure that passports, at least in Arizona, my luck so far has been I got my passport last year. I received it within 6 weeks, but typically it's 8 to 12 weeks. If you're renewing for some reason, it's a lot longer in the US right now. But if you're getting a new one, it doesn't seem to take as long. I don't know what's going on, but that's
I'm
everyone I've
actually going
spoken
to
to.
I'm going to renew mine now, actually. So actually, I have my passport. Yeah, my passport expired. I thought it expired in May. And also, if you guys don't know my updates, I moved. I bought a house about 2 months ago, and that's why like you see boxes behind me. We're still working on my new office and craft room, so forgive me. But yeah, my passport just expired.
Don't show your number.
I
Don't
won't
show
show my
anything.
It expired January 2024. So, and I have a big book because I used to travel a lot. I used to be a flight attendant, and I'm still gonna get a big book because it feels cool. But
And you
yeah,
can
it's
get an
really
ID or you can get a book. I like the book more.
you can get both now. You can get I've never
Yeah,
had
you
the
can
ID,
get both, but I like the book more. Like I like
but
the
the
book.
but the ID actually works for ground travel between the U.S. and Canada and the U.S. and Mexico.
The
So that is
travel
something
ID,
to do
yes. But
just for ground
understand,
travel.
yeah, that's a ground travel. And that what we talked about with you can't fly with the travel. I mean, well, they say that you can, but the problem is if you fly with that travel ID, you're going to go through a much longer identification process. And I was telling Jinx this earlier. If it's a weekend and they can't get a hold of the authority that can verify your identity, you might be stuck until they can get a hold of that authority. So really stick to ground transport with that travel ID only. If you are traveling via an airplane between the US and Canada, you're going to want a passport anyways. It's honestly the fastest, easiest route. When I went to Canada with the passport, it was all virtual if I had the passport, and you scan this QR code that's included only with the book. And when I scanned it, it said, "Oh, cool, you're good," and it just sent me on its way. I also have an additional, like I went through TSA and I got background checks, and I have additional clearances. If you can afford it, I recommend it. Usually lasts 5 to 10 years, depending on the package you purchase. And if you're traveling internationally, it makes it so much easier and so much faster.
Yeah, and so just so you guys know what the structure of today's episode is going to be like, first we're going to talk about travel tips, travel information in general. If you are watching from outside the US, it is quite common for Americans to not travel outside of the US. And if you've ever been to the US, you probably understand why, because it takes a long time to travel, even within the US itself.
I mean, if I
So
wanted to go to Florida, it would take me at least 6 to 6.5 hours to fly. If I wanted to
yeah,
drive there, it'd be like, what, 3, 4 days?
yeah. So I mean, I know we get a lot of, and I've lived overseas, so I get it. I see it a lot. So we get a lot of flack about not traveling, but to be honest, like the U.S. encompasses a lot of different like terrains, regions, like weather conditions. So
We
kind
have
of you
all of the biomes in one country.
we do, and we have all sorts of different cultures because a lot of different areas of the U.S. This is like a history exam. A lot of different areas of the U.S. were colonized by different countries, right? So we have a couple different a lot of cultures. But anyway, regardless of that, a lot of Americans do not hold a passport. I've had a passport since I was born because I was born overseas, so I've never let it lapse. And if you've never had a passport, that is different from renewing. And if you
Mhm.
have had a passport, but it was issued more than 15 years ago, they usually expire in 10 years. But if you wait 5 years and then it's been more than
You
15
have to
years, you have
start
to
all over
apply
again.
for a new one, right? So document wise and like clearance wise, it's easiest to renew your passport from a still valid passport.
It just takes longer to receive the new book now because they're getting more renewals than they are. I think that's what's happening is they're getting more renewals than they are new applications. But it's still either way. I will say renewal is also cheaper than going brand new. So you, if you can renew, stick with that.
So
Um,
I can tell you the fees because I just did it.
okay.
The fees the fees are $160. So that's not terribly. That's for 10 years. There are some restrictions. Not everyone might get 10 years. I don't know what the restrictions are, but on average, it's 10 years. And you can get a bigger book if you plan on traveling a lot. The reason why some people get bigger books is some countries will require like full pages for your like visas and stuff. And like I'm gonna cover up a lot of this, but this is like a whole page visa. I don't know if you can see like the top of it. That's like a whole page. On average, they usually have like 4 spots. So they can stamp like one stamp, like enter, exit. But then, like I said, some require a whole page. Here's another one. This is Cambodia. It's
Yeah,
expired
and
in.
when I went to Canada, they didn't even stamp me. They sent me a receipt and they told me to keep the receipt in the back of my passport book so that if I came back and anyone asked me, I would pull that receipt out because it was a printed receipt from a terminal.
Like here's this one. They stamped it like 6 times. Like they're like enter, exit, enter, exit. So like if you plan on traveling a lot or if you're renewing and plan on traveling a lot, like get the bigger book. It's free. It's 50 pages versus I think 20. um and yeah, like Thermo Cosplay said, like sometimes they'll just have you insert like pages or something into your passport, but don't lose it. They might not attach it, but you need to actually keep
Yeah,
it
you
for
need
your.
to keep it during your duration of travel. Once you get home, you can just be like, it's a
Yeah.
receipt. Like, um, but another thing to consider once you have your passport, some countries also require a tourism visa. So in order to visit that country, you then have to apply, pay another fee, and then typically that visa will last a certain period of time, and then you don't have to pay for it again. And some of them are stamps, and some of them are you receive a receipt, and they give you like a code or a number that you provide to that country. And so just make sure you're aware of wherever you're traveling to that you determine if you need just a passport or if you need a passport and visa.
So here's a couple of things about visas. You can easily go to the U.S. travel website. So remember that would end in .gov, and this is going to come in handy when visas come up. You can always go into there's like a travel section, and you can put in like travel to the UK, and so it'll give you information on what they require. There are some countries that do something called an ESTA, and oh my gosh, what does ESTA stand for? It's basically kind of like an agreement between two countries where you can get like a visa and it doesn't cost anything. It's
It's
limited to
the
certain.
electronic system for travel authorization.
Yes. So between the US and the UK, you can get an ESTA, which allows you to travel. I think you can stay up to 60 or 90 days without
Mhm.
having to renew that ESTA. But of course, you have to
Yeah, and
leave.
some of them are called digital nomad visas, and
Mm.
some of those digital nomad visas can go all the way up to a year, depending on what they are.
I think those are more work focused, work based,
Yeah, some
right?
of them are, but some of them can be related to if like you're a partner traveling with somebody who
Oh,
has a
okay.
digital nomad, that you can also apply for the same thing.
I see. Yeah. So those we have quite a few of those countries where they're pretty easy to travel to. I think there's a couple other European countries we have ESTA with.
Mhm.
So that's really easy. And here's another thing about visas. Please, you give yourself at least 1 to 2 months to apply before your travel. Because there's some that
I say 2 to 3 months right now, just because it's a little slow. Some
right.
states, like Arizona, was pretty fast, but I've talked to other people in different states, and one person they submitted 2 months ago, and they still haven't even received the confirmation that it's going to be mailed out. Mail out takes at least 7 days.
Yes. So here's another thing is that, like, yes, some need to be mailed out, especially countries that we don't have agreements with. A lot of Asian countries, you need to apply further in advance. African countries and some Middle East as well. Europe, you can apply for something called what is it called? It's like a visa that encompasses like the EU. That's a little harder to get, but once you get that, then you have entrance into the countries that are in the EU for, it's similar to the time of an ESTA, I believe. But there are some that you can also apply for online. Now, here's something
It's called the ETIAS, and it's ETIAS basically, and it's the European travel visa, so any EU country.
It's got like another name that everybody calls it, but I cannot remember what it is. What's it? EU visa. Or maybe they just changed it, because when I was living overseas.
Yeah, that's what the current website says it's called. It's
Schengen. It's a Schengen visa.
There's also Schengen. Yeah, there's a Schengen too.
Yeah, the Schengen is entry permit for non-EU nationals, temporary visit for up to 90 days in any 180-day period, so you can enter and exit, enter. So it lets you do several single entry, multiple entry airport transit. And this is
I'm posting it in the comments so everyone can see it too.
Consult the EU list of countries whose citizens are required to hold a visa. So the Schengen is pretty powerful, but it's kind of difficult to get. Although I think for Americans, it's not too hard. And if you guys don't understand what we're talking about passports, like some passports are stronger than others. That's just and when they mean by stronger, that means they have more agreements. Or they have an easier time getting into other countries. I think that strongest passport is like, I want to say it's like Swiss, because Switzerland's like neutral, right?
Probably, yeah. So another thing you want to consider when you're traveling with passports, before you even travel to the country, before you even book anything, before you agree to if like you're being a guest for a convention or you're going for fun, before you do any of that, make sure you check the traveler information on the travel.state.gov link that we posted, because they have advisories for LGBTQI travelers, for high risk areas, for female travelers as well, and for travelers with disabilities, because there's some nations that do not have any form of accommodation. And so you'll want to read through those lists and advisories to make sure that you stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely for any travel. Always check the US travel website for advisories. And again, like, that is an advisory. They're not saying don't go there unless they do close. There are times when they can close or cancel their visa agreements with other countries. So that is a thing.
Yeah, and the big thing that they say for LGBTQ travelers, just to give you guys a heads up, is that most countries do not recognize same-sex marriages. So sometimes when you travel, and there are some countries where men and women cannot share a room unless they're married, and
so we'll get more into
the way their definition of men and women is different in some countries too. There's not as much inclusivity. So just be careful where you're traveling to, is what we're saying.
Yeah. So going back to the applying for your visa online, there are websites that will dupe you into thinking that you're going to apply. Now, this happened to me, and luckily I was only out $25, which I know $25 can still be a lot for a lot of people. But I applied for an Australian visa. And again, it's an easy thing for US to Australia. It's just you got to go through these processes, and it takes a little bit of time. So we're actually in the airport, and they're like, we can't find your visa information. I'm like, no. So I realized that I didn't apply on an actual like government website, which you can apply for your visas on government websites. There are other agencies that might be legitimate, but I would just avoid them altogether.
Yeah, and then I submitted a link in the comments for everyone to see. These are the advisories for everything that they can think of right now. So if you're going to travel, especially if you're a cosplayer, because we tend to push the limits of what some countries think is acceptable, check these advisories.
Yes. So I was lucky enough to be able to process my Australian visa before the flight took off. But just be aware, like always use government websites, always use government agencies.
.govs. You can scan. Okay, so here's a recommendation, Jess. This will save your butt too. In the future, if you get to a website, you're not sure if it's valid or not, go to it's called a virus total and scan it, and it will tell you if there's any indications or any reports of this being a false website.
That is a good tool.
Mhm.
So yeah, guys, be aware of where your money's going. Hi, Catherine. Catherine said hi from Facebook. Um, so just be aware, guys, of lots of things. Now you can go to a government website, and when you click apply for the visa, they might take you to a third party which
Yeah,
operates their visas.
they're
So
trying to
always,
do that more and more now to make it more available.
and to make the process probably faster, so the government's
Mhm.
not having to process it all. But
Yeah.
always start on the .gov websites for Americans. If you're traveling outside the U.S., we don't know the information, so this is mostly just tips for Americans. So sorry, but we're just doing what we know. We don't want to give out wrong information. Now, for travelers coming from the U.S. outward, if you don't know, everybody must travel on a government travel ID. So yes, there are 50 states. No, we don't all have the same rules.
Nope.
So Arizona did not have government, like, what was it, like government approved
We didn't have
identification.
approval because our IDs expired too long. Now I think the
Mhm.
IDs expire every 8 to 10 years, which is what the
Mhm.
federal requirement is. And that's official, I believe, after the end of, I think it's this summer. I think it's next month or the month next. They extended it as many times as they can, but I think you have to have the ID now if you want to travel.
I think it was May 2025, but double check it, guys, on
Yeah.
DOT. I think Arizona Department of Travel, Transportation will have
ID.
it. But essentially what it is like our
Da, da,
driver's
da, da, da.
licenses in
Yeah,
Arizona.
they did change it to May 2025.
Yeah,
They've
our
extended it times, but I don't think they're allowed to extend it any further.
yeah, because well, they extended it through COVID, so that was the first big hurdle
Yeah,
was
because the
COVID.
first one was supposed to be 2021, I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what they were doing was in Arizona and some other countries, some other states already have
It feels
like
like countries,
qualified.
there's so many states.
I know. So some states already had like government qualified IDs and they were fine. Arizona does not because our driver's license do not expire until we turn 60. I'm not joking. Everybody, like everyone else, would think it was like a fake ID. I'm like, nah, I'm serious. So Arizona started allowing people to apply for the travel ID. Now, the problem was when COVID hit, they were so slammed and like short staffed that you could not apply for a travel ID unless you were indeed traveling within a certain amount of time. So then that pushed a lot of people back that couldn't even apply for it. And that's why it's been delayed so long. So
Mhm.
if you have a passport, you can use it for travel anywhere. But if you do not have a passport and you're from Arizona or another state like us, you need to have now a travel ID just to travel even domestically, just to even go from city to city on a plane.
Yep.
Essentially, any kind of like plane travel, you need to have this travel
And
ID.
there are actually some states that if you don't have the ID, they make you have a secondary ID, or some of them even require like a social security number or stuff like that. So
Right.
there's some states that even though Arizona's been extended to 2025, there are other states that when you're traveling, doesn't matter. You still have to have additional identification
Mhm.
because they don't trust your ID.
Right. So those are some things to keep in mind. Another couple things I would suggest when traveling internationally is keep a copy of your passport. Now, when you're actually traveling, lock that passport away in the hotel safe or somewhere safe in your accommodation, and carry your copy with you. This is in case you encounter any kind of issues and they ask for your identification. Your home, like your driver's license may not be valid for them. They might not even care. So at least if you have a copy of it, they can validate some information on it. Another thing to keep a copy of if you have it is your birth certificate. And I would keep that with your passport at
If
home
you can, if you're
or
I
at
have
your accommodation.
I have digital vaults of things.
Mhm.
If you want to establish a digital vault, I recommend checking them out. But it's a way to secure your data, lock everything down, and make sure you have copies of things should your physical printouts disappear somehow.
Yeah, I would do all of those things, because then also your phone could be lost or stolen. So always have a physical photocopy and then and pictures. I have pictures on my phone as well. That's a little, I don't know if I recommend that because it's, could be unsafe. But if you have the digital vault, like a secure digital vault, like Thermal Cosplay said, that's even better. And then, of course, when you're traveling in your cosplays, now
don't go to the airport in costume. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't go to the
when
airport in costume.
when you're actually doing the travel like overseas, keep those documents on you and close to you. Always get like a secret pocket or a secret pouch that you can fit under your cosplay as well.
They have some now too that if you're wearing bras and stuff, actually they typically recommend everybody to wear some form of like a really form-fitted undershirt, and there's pockets that you can sit in the front, on the sides, and even in the back. And they compress so that when you wear clothing you really don't see it.
Yeah. So those are kind of the and cash. I would definitely keep probably a decent amount of
$100 cash at least
to get you like for transportation, to get you maybe from where you are to the airport. I don't just anything like that, just for extreme emergencies. So okay, so now
I think we've covered all the documentation stuff. We've done like 20 minutes of documentation, so I think
let's do a little bit more preparation.
Preparation is okay. So if you're traveling with costumes, big things to consider. What are the weight limits? Because when you're traveling internationally, typically when you're traveling in the US across the states, there's not very big weight limits because they're a little bit more understanding there. But when you're traveling internationally, the fuel cost is very much a consideration. And so you have to think about how heavy your suitcase is. And it's not a matter of, oh, it's 1 or 2 pounds over, I'll just pay the fee. No, they will not let it on the plane. This is the amount of weight you get, and that's it. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. Also make sure that you check and see what TSA or what the rules are per country. For instance, I was just mentioning this the Jinx. For TSA, they just updated their list recently. No toy replica firearms or ammunition is permitted inside checked bags anymore. So you can't even pack anything. Especially, you also can't pack whips, nunchucks, batons, or stun guns in your checked bags anymore. So make sure you're checking even the toy prop and replica updates for TSA. They actually have a list, and see if it's approved or not approved. And if it's on the prohibited list, you can't do it. The only way you would be able to travel with it is to ship it, and make sure wherever you're shipping it to will accept it if it's going through customs, because they're going to scan that box.
Now, another thing that you could do is if you do have friends there in that country that you're meeting or that you're going to, see if they have something you can borrow or if they can source something for you. That's a great way to go. Or you can buy the prop once you get there, and then I don't know, just give it donate it afterwards or something. I mean, those are not cost-effective ways to do it, but if you're really serious about
well, yeah, and for weight, sometimes you can use those golf bags or those large poster containers, and you can check them as well.
I would not say golf. So I also used to work in the airport, guys, not golf bags, because golf bags.
Well, yeah, that's true. Golf bags are they're not very secure.
Here's the thing
the
about
poster containers are pretty good though.
Yes, poster containers. Here's the thing about golf bags is that you have to sign. So passengers have to sign a waiver because golf bags contain, special equipment, right? And people try to double it up because they also have to pay extra for it because it's larger than standard. And then people try and stuff it with their clothes, but they're not allowed to do that. No. That's like taking, your stereo equipment or your sound equipment and then using it as your personal luggage as well. Like, you can't do that. I mean, people won't search it, but if your bag is way too heavy for what it should be, that's going to be the problem.
Yeah, so, poster tubes are usually the best bet from what I've seen. So if it's a long prop that's easy to fit in a poster tube, or my biggest recommendation if you're purchasing props is something that you can break down and put into your checked luggage.
Yes. Something like as you're making your prop, it's like try and see how you can break it down so that it is travelable. Another thing is you can use cardboard boxes, but you need to check your airline's requirements on cardboard boxes. So they do accept them, but because they are not like airline approved luggage, you are going to sign additional waivers. There may be issues, and of course cardboard is soft, so there could be other risks in terms of bringing your luggage.
We recommend those collapsible plastic boxes are usually what's approved to have like the latches, and they can be locked, and has to be a TSA lock, right? It has to be something they can get access to.
Yeah, it has to be
but yeah,
or they'll just break it. Like if you send it. If you send it without a TSA lock, they could just break it, and that could
also just cut it off, and then it's unsecure the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always encourage. Also, another thing too, when you're considering packing, say you're not bringing a whole lot of things, I always recommend bags for your wigs. All right. because typically, if you're traveling internationally, don't travel with a pre-styled wig unless you can fit it in your checked baggage. They don't like having those little boxes above in the overhead because of how packed international travel is. So that's one thing to consider. Also, additionally, have unique garment bags and have it labeled with exactly what's in it. And then that way, you know, if something's missing and your bag was open from like they did a TSH pre-check and something was missing, you have that label being like, always take a photo before and after. That's what I do. I pack and I take a photo before. And then if I go through and I'm like, this is what I had every time and this is what's missing, you've got kind of photo evidence because stuff like that sadly does happen. But that's why
Yeah.
you want to insure any high value items and your luggage just for that flight. And you can do that. You can insure that stuff. And especially people who are like making custom outfits that took years to create and have maybe hundreds of
Right.
maybe even $1,000 or more, insure it. Insure it. Um, Finally, aside from having garment bags and stuff, if you have shoes and stuff, if they're broken, do not travel with them because they'll think that you're trying to
Shoes.
hide stuff in them.
Oh, I see. I
And
see.
they'll swab it. I didn't know that my sole was coming off my shoe when I went through Canada, and I went through this whole drug test and swab thing, and then finally I was like, "Why is this happening?" And he's like, "Well, your shoe." And I'm like, "What do you mean my shoe?" And then he looked at me and laughed. He's like, "You don't know your shoe's broken?" I'm like, "My shoe's broken?" And then the reaction from me being so startled that my shoe was broken, he's like, "Okay, you just go." Like I had
Oh,
no idea that the sole had come off my boot. I was devastated. I loved those shoes. I actually couldn't repair them. Like the leather had started to like it just got older. Um, but that's one thing to consider. Make sure everything's in good repair, or it may be considered a object of concern, and you might have to go through additional checks, and that can delay your baggage actually ending up on the plane.
mhm.
Which
Yes.
leads to if your bags are lost and or delayed, I always recommend a duffel or a small carry-on with at least one night's worth of clothes, one day's worth of clothes, and a spare costume or two, and then any toiletries, small ones that you can travel with.
Yes. So are we moving into now packing? We are, right? So a
Yeah.
couple of basic packing tips. So these are for everybody, not just cosplayers. Things to keep on your person when you're flying. These are things you should not be checking into your luggage because, again, like Thermo said, you can lose them, they can get damaged. What people can steal it, whatever. It just happens, okay? And yes, there are things you can do after the fact, but when your medication's lost or stolen and you need it like today, there's not much you can do. So things to keep with you, of course, your important documents, passport, birth certificate, identifications, credit cards, money, anything like that that you would not want stolen and could like have a day or two of, inconvenience at home, you don't want because overseas you're going to have a whole trip long of inconvenience. Keep those on your person. Keep electronics on your person. Laptops, they typically want you to carry on or remove the battery in. But
Anything with
again,
lithium ion has to be in
yeah,
carry-on, has to be in the pressurized cabin.
yeah. But if you really need to check your laptop in, you got to remove the battery. If you can't remove the battery, then you got to take it on with you. But I would keep electronics with me, like things get damaged or stolen, like you want to
You're
keep
like,
those
I
with
bring
you.
a travel size airbrush and it has a battery in it, so it has to go in my checked, or sorry, in
Yeah,
my carry-on.
and medication, always. So if you have prescribed medications, first thing is make sure that you have enough plus a little extra to cover your trip. Secondly, check where you're traveling to. I lived in Dubai. Dubai has medicine restrictions. There's some that are completely blocked and you can get arrested for. So always be smart and check your destination requirements on what medications are legal. And this has been happening a lot now since the US is legalizing CBD, marijuana, right? People are thinking they can go into any country now. That's not true. You're always abiding by the country's rules that you are entering. So that is super important, guys. Do not mess up your trip just because, you can I take gummies now to sleep because I have sleep apnea, but I'm not going to take it into a country. I'll just deal with it. If you need it to survive, you're going to have to talk to your doctor and then see what you guys can do. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if those are like things that people need to survive, but you can
Well,
always
and the
talk to
big
your
thing to
doctor.
consider, there are some countries where contraceptives are considered illegal.
There are
So
such, yeah.
be careful.
Yes. So those are things to look at for your medication. And if you want to go a step further, you can look at pharmacies nearby where you're staying to
Yep.
see if your pharmacist or doctor can send prescriptions there. Sometimes they can in emergency situations. That's if you want to be super, super prepared.
You can
What else?
also
Like,
sometimes get exceptions through embassies, so maybe
mhm.
talk to your embassies as well.
Yes, make sure you know where the embassy is in the country that
Mhm.
you're visiting. I'll be honest, I didn't even register with the embassy in Dubai when I lived there, but it's smart. Don't like do as I say, not as I do. It's smart to know where your embassy is, and you never even know. It could be some sort of like something could happen in the world. I mean, let's see how many things have happened in the world the last couple of years where people just got stuck or whatever. Um, Also, like vision. So if you have contact lenses or glasses, keep those with you, because if you lose both of those and if you're pretty much blind, what are you going to do? You can't go to the grocery store and pick up a pair of glasses. So, and keep your prescription with you. You could also do that as
Mhm.
well. When I lived in Dubai, you could walk up to an optometrist and just buy a pair of glasses, but that might not happen everywhere.
I'm
So keep those
jealous.
on you. Anything that helps you function as a human, you need to keep it on you.
Yes,
So yeah.
agreed. Also make sure that another thing outside of medications, some vitamins have ingredients that may or may not be permitted in those countries. There's some countries that have ingredient bans. So check your
Mhm.
ingredients. Sometimes they'll allow you to bring in a small amount if they know that it's just going to be during that time. But if it's like a full bottle, you may not be able to bring it in. So check
Yeah.
check the amount that you're permitted to travel with for those countries as well. I think we've kind of gone over rules. Make sure we've talked about like Jinx mentioned the cultural laws and rules. Make sure you're checking those. You're checking those advisories. There's some countries where you're required to have a chaperone. There are some countries where you can't have like Japan does not like seeing collarbones apparently. And so there's modesty rules for some countries, and so just be aware that you're going, like Jinx said, you are not taking all the culture from where you're at and bringing it there. That people complain about colonizing. That's what that does. They take over. You need to adapt to whatever the culture is of that country and be respectful of it if you're going to visit.
Remember that, like the visa, they're approving you to enter their country.
Mhm. They're
So
expecting
that's
you to abide by their rules then.
yep, and then that's what that visa is you agree. You agree,
Mhm.
so when people enter a country and something happens and they're like, well, blah 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 blah, I'm like, but that's their law.
And there are
Same thing
just
with
some countries you don't want to go to, and there's some costumers that I know, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I got this invite." And like there's a reason, because they can't get anybody to come because of how strict some of the rules are, how some people are treated. The inclusivity is an issue, right? And so the reason they're reaching out to you is, yes, you're fantastic and amazing, but the reason they're reaching out to you is because they're trying to find someone who is unfamiliar with the rules you're going to encounter. And that's why we're trying to prepare you, because there are amazing countries out there. Even ones with strict rules still have incredible culture to experience. You just have to be mindful of where you're headed.
absolutely. So always a great thing to look at the information on the cost conventions website. Sometimes they will have international travel information there, especially if they do expect a lot of people from outside their country to visit. If they are inviting you as a guest, that whoever is
The
the
handler, or yeah.
the organizers should be helpful and at least directing you to where you can find this information. And then always verify things that they say, like, oh yeah, you can bring that medication in. Always double check on your own. Don't ever let them tell you otherwise, because maybe they're not even sure. Maybe they're like, yeah, I traveled
Mhm.
in, but they're citizens, so it's different. So always double check that information. Now, when we're talking about like restrictions in terms of what you can wear, so I'm going to talk about my experience while I was in Dubai. Dubai is a Middle Eastern country. It is primarily Muslim. However, they do not require women to cover their heads or faces. Um, Although the locals do, so local Emiratis do, it's part of their national outfit actually. So men wear, and oh my gosh, I cannot remember the names of them now. I know the women's is an abaya, so an abaya is like a black robe, with a hood. And some women they might wear a hood, some women they might wear complete face mask, and it's their choice. So there's no regulations, there's no law that is requiring that in the United Arab Emirates. Men wear, and I cannot remember what it is, but they wear I know what the slang is, and I'm not gonna say the slang. But they wear a white robe, and they usually have like a hat with a rope. Um, And that's like their
Is it a
sorry.
kandura?
Yeah, so that's like their sorry. That's like their everyday wear. So that's for them. You know, the country does not require you to wear it. However, they do have requirements when you're out in public. Yes, you can wear a bikini at the pool. No, you cannot wear a bikini walking from your car to the pool. So that's how strict they are. As far as conventions, now when I lived in Dubai, their first Middle East Film and Comic Con was in either I think it was 2012 or 2011, and that was their first like convention ever. And I actually went to it, and I didn't cosplay because I was like, whoa, there's restrictions, and people were cosplaying there. So I got a little bit more comfortable with cosplay. People do cosplay there however they like. There is hijabi cosplay, lots of it, which is, you know, nice. And what was great was these cosplayers did not discriminate against each other. So, you know, we all respected each other as cosplayers. However, the general public is not the same. So I was really, really pleased at how welcoming and, you know, accepting I was as a foreigner in cosplay to the community. And of course, the community there is actually very international. But to the public, it may seem inappropriate. So here's where you need to make your decisions. As Morrigan, I would probably be like, oh, you know, there's other cosplayers that would appreciate Morrigan, even like local cosplayers. But because this outfit would be generally looked down upon in the public, I would not wear it to a convention. Even simulated nudity can be trouble. So I would just not wear something that was, and you guys can't see the rest of this, but if you know what Morgan is, she wears like, you know, a thong. I wear a thong and opaque stockings, but these kind of things are deemed to be inappropriate in general. I would not even bother wearing this to a convention in Dubai. Full stop. Now, I do have a picture. Where's my picture? I do have a picture here, which is interesting. Now, it's just a candid picture. I'm going to share. Hold on a second. Wait, share screen? Share window. Here we go. So this was, what year? MEFCC 2015. So this is Middle East Film and Comic Con 2015. I cannot remember the name. Man, flying takes a lot of my memory out. It was at a convention center, and that's my cousin with me. So she's Australian, and we're cosplaying as Princess Mononoke. So she's wearing kind of like shorts, and I'm wearing Josie, which you can't see. My whole midriff is exposed, and it's a short skirt, but I have shorts underneath it. Now these outfits were fine. Nobody, like I know the guys looking in the background look all judgy, but it's because we were running like there was someone taking our picture. Here, take this, and I don't really take a picture with this. So they're just kind of like watching. But you can see in the background all the different like cultures. See, this woman's wearing an abaya, which you can't really see her face clearly. We're not supposed to be taking pictures of them, but and then here from the back, you can see this woman's fully covered as well. But everybody inside the convention is accepting. So remember that, yes, they could be, although there could be people from outside this kind of like subculture in the convention. And that's still something that you need to be aware of. So I'm going to stop that there. That was just an example. And that's probably the most skin I would show at one of these conventions, maybe even less these days. I don't know what the culture is like now, because again, that was 2015. So here's a picture.
Well, and you mentioned like the pictures, which is a good thing, because there's some countries where you can't go to the convention in costume. You have to set up a time, and you have that time period in costume. So you bring luggage, they have changing stations, you change, you wear your costume for that time period, and then you get back into normal clothes and you go to the convention. So think about that too, because there's some that require that as well.
Yes, I definitely would not walk from my car to the convention wearing this. I would have something over it to cover my midriff. That's, again, like you can wear the bikini at the pool, but you can't wear the bikini outside the pool. So just things to be aware of. Yes, you can wear some. I mean, there are some costumes you probably could wear. Like I would say the typical schoolgirl uniform or, you know, schoolboy uniform is okay. Those are just generic things that, you know, a blazer and a skirt, that's fine, that's acceptable. But to be safe, if you're not sure, just change when you get there. I know
another thing too is consider makeup. There's also some have rules about makeup.
Yes.
like how much you can wear, how much your face can be covered, what masks are and are not permitted. So there's should all be in the rules. Like, a big thing is always check the rules. You want to check the rules even if you're traveling in the US. So make sure you're checking the rules doubly if you're traveling internationally, because it's going to be a lot harder to source other materials if you don't have a backup.
Absolutely. And so and I wanted to mention this about luggage as well, because people, and again, I've worked in the airport, so I know people like to fight about luggage. They do. And every other country other than the US, it seems, I don't know if there's any other country that uses pounds, every other country uses, oh my God, kilograms, okay? kgs. Every other, even Canada. I don't know why we don't. So when you travel, some airlines will either say, like, keep their rule. So you can have the two, if you're traveling internationally, like transatlantic or transpacific, you can have the two suitcases at 50 pounds each. But I can say that most international travel outside the US, their restrictions is one piece of luggage at 32 kilograms. One. That's not two at 15 kilograms each. It's one. And then I know a lot of Americans are like, but I have two and they equal 32 kilograms. Nope. So make sure you read the restrictions on where you're going. Some American airlines, not American Airlines specifically, but some US carriers will adopt the international traveler rule if you are connecting to another airline outside of the US. So for example, let's say we're flying, and again, you have to check the rules. This is an example that I'm thinking of. If we're flying from Phoenix to London on American Airlines, okay, and that's it, we can take the two pieces of luggage at 50 pounds each, there and back. But if we're going to Birmingham, so I'm going from Phoenix to London, and then I'm transferring on British Airways from London to Birmingham, then it'll most likely be the one piece at 32 kilograms. So this is really important when booking your travel, is that go directly to the airline website and book your travel. That way you know it's clear what baggage policies you're doing. If you do it on websites like Kayak or Cheap
They
Ticket,
probably won't show you
or
the
they'll show you something wrong.
wrong. Yeah. So I recommend too. I know some people that have done that with traveled with two bags, and then they have a delivery service set up at the international to deliver it to the new location.
Yeah, and that could work too. That's a lot more expensive, but if you're serious about your cosplay and getting it to where you want it to be, then that's what you probably need to
It
do.
might be cheaper than shipping it internationally, and it'll probably arrive on time. So it's
And then
options. There's just options.
and then when we talk about things to pack, again, like, you're going to have to be flexible. I mean, accuracy is important to a lot of people, but if there's things that you can't bring, just don't. I would say the easiest thing is just don't. Like, if you're a recognizable character without your gun, you'll be fine. Like Diva from Overwatch without her light gun will be fine. If you're a character that's not as recognizable with the gun, and if that concerns you that much, either, I don't know, like, make one out of cardboard, like on a flat surface, a picture. I don't know. Like, you're gonna have to figure out some other creative way to do it, but you're gonna have to make some concessions so that your
Yeah.
travel is easy. I think it's more important to have easy and safe travel than have accurate cosplay.
I
So a
agree.
lot
And
of times,
also, I recommend not traveling alone, especially if you're traveling internationally for the first time, if you can. I grew up going in and out of Mexico, so traveling across the border was very familiar to me. So the first time I went to Canada, while I was nervous because I'd never flown, I'd always like walked or driven across the border. It wasn't that different. It was actually a lot faster and easier because border crossing took longer than going through customs in Canada. So that was pretty surprising. But always bring a buddy with you, especially if you're going somewhere where you don't speak the language. I recommend hiring a translator or a reputable guide that can help you navigate the entire area. If you're not a guest, if you're a guest, these things should be provided to you. So just be aware of that. That should be available to you. If you're not and you're traveling for fun or with family, consider those options. Also consider currency conversion. The US dollar is not the highest currency in the world, despite what people may think. So remember, the EU, like the euro, is more expensive right now than the US dollar. But then Canada's dollar is less than the US dollar. So just pay attention to where you're traveling to, so that you don't accidentally run out of money. And there are some nations that when you land in the port of entry, if they if you're one of those random checks that you end up some people end up being a random check, they will ask to check your bank account. This is not abnormal. They will ask to check your bank account to make sure you have enough money to be a tourist.
Yes. Yeah, that does happen. That absolutely does happen. And then if
That
you
sounds
don't have
weird because people, Americans freak out about that. And I'm like, no, if you don't go there with enough money, they're going to send you back home.
because they're going to think you might stay. So
Hmm.
there's also things like you need to have a return ticket. If you don't have a return ticket, they're going to wonder why. So these are things that you need to make sure that you have in place. Some places won't even let you out. Like the US might not even let you out until you have your return ticket because they already know it's going to be trouble for them. If you get stuck in another country, they have to help you. So they might not even let you go. So those are things that you need to make sure
And if
that
you're
you
a
have about.
guest, think about the tax rules. Every country has a different tax rule. And if you do not claim your, I mean, if you're within a certain number, like if they're not paying, if sometimes there's a cap. And if you don't meet that cap, they're just gonna, you're good. But if you're getting paid at or above that cap, then you have to submit the documentation to that country and your home nation. So just be aware of that.
So this is a picture from MCM London 2016. It was like the last international trip I took before I moved back home. And it's so fun to see. The fandoms are the same everywhere. So there were Disney meetups. These were all the Ariels that were there, cute little Melody. But when I decided what costumes I was going to pack, I went with smaller, more, easier to pack costumes like Ariel. I wouldn't bring Widowmaker with her big giant like head pieces and like, sniper rifles, not going to bring it. And I know that guests, like when Yaya Han came to visit, she kept it really simple with, outfits that didn't need a lot or didn't have props. And
Yeah,
those are just
that's
the
what a lot of
realities
people
of it.
have no people have commented on that too, where when I went to Canada, they're like, oh, you had really simple outfits. I'm like, yeah, because I wanted everything to fit in a carry-on.
Yeah.
I was only going to be there for 4 days. I wanted everything to fit in a carry-on, and I was giving away a bunch of stuff to be like as a thank you because I was doing mostly panels and just judging, right? And I was just having fun. But I wanted to fit it in a carry-on because I didn't want to have to worry about too many rules to follow. I just wanted something
Yeah.
very simple. So just bringing cloth cosplays and wigs and that fit in wig bags, sometimes that's the easiest way to do it to make sure that you travel correctly. If you guys do have
Yeah,
questions,
absolutely.
let us know.
And
Uh,
just don't,
oh, sorry, you cut off
just
for a
don't
second.
stress
What'd you
yourself
say?
out. Like I was just going to share another picture. You can if you want.
Oh
Share
no,
a
go ahead.
picture.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Yaya came to Middle East Film and Comic Con in 2014. And she was very aware of the rules as well. It was the first time to, I don't know if she'd been to the Middle East, but it's definitely her first time to Dubai. And that's her fiance, her husband, Brian, who came with them. And we showed them around town and stuff. But she was very like mindful of what she brought. Like that's the most skin she showed was her shoulders. She was even, concerned about that. We kind of had some conversations before she arrived, but she kept it really, really simple. And, her fans were still pleased to see her. She was still able to interact a lot with, the attendees and do panels and stuff like that. And everything went so amazingly for her. So just something to keep in mind, like when you're traveling, like this outfit probably fit in a pretty small, section of her suitcase. And traveling with Brian, he's able to carry some of her stuff as well. So that's also another plus if you bring a friend or a partner with you who's not a cosplayer, you can always use up their luggage too. So definitely things to look at. And I know Yaya gets a lot of flack for her sexy cosplays, which she's doing characters accurately. I love what she does it great, but again, she was still very mindful of where she was going. I did hear some stuff from the community before she arrived, and I'm like, man, guys, like everyone likes to judge, but she was fine, it was great, and she had a great time. So just things to think about, guys. Have fun. Like, I think your main thing is if you've never been there or done this convention, focus on your experience and
Yeah,
have
spend
fun
some more
and meeting
extra
people.
days if you can too. Like check out the
Yeah.
culture of the nation, check out the architecture, check out the food, get to know a local or two, like get familiar so that you have more
Yeah.
perspective and more perception. Because I find that the only way we counterbalance our own implicit or unconscious biases is by experiencing others' perspectives, right? And by opening ourselves up to the perspectives of others and accepting that, our world isn't the only world that exists. And our actions and behaviors can negatively impact others unless we're willing to open ourselves to new experiences.
Yeah, and I went to I've been to London several times. My ex-husband is from England. But I went with my friend Miranda. She's Australian. So me and her went to MCM together, and we actually did take a day to go to the Tower of London and be tourists and whatever. Like, I've been to a lot of tourist spots, but this is a first for both of us, and we had a lot of fun. And it was a nice break before the convention. And then also, we're kind of running out of time, but we didn't really talk about accommodations.
Oh yeah,
When picking your
accommodations. Also
accommodation.
travel, like when you are traveling, make sure you have some like either 12 hours of padding or a full day of padding because time zones can switch, right? So that messes people up sometimes. And then also there can be delays. So make sure you have padding.
Yes. So, in terms of acclimatization, if you don't know what that means that your body type is on one time zone, and you may be traveling to somewhere. For example, Dubai is 11 hours ahead of Arizona. So you might arrive at 7 a.m., but it's like bedtime for you. So these are things to also keep in mind of where you're traveling. You might need a day to just sleep or get
Mhm.
used to the time, because if you want to be up and doing all day convention stuff, you need to rest. So give yourself that kind of uh, buffer as well. Now, when you're picking your accommodation, it's important to see, can you walk there, and really, like, what is walking? Because like me and walking, we're not friends. So I have to actually look at how long it takes to walk to where the entrance is, right? Because it might just say, here's convention center. But you always want to see where the entrance is. Yeah, I said Dubai like 8 times, Matt. Where you been? So anyway, um, for example, for MCM London, we chose a place directly in front of the convention center. Like literally, we just had a sky bridge and we walked to the convention center. We did not want to mess with taxis. Taxis can be really expensive or hard to find in some countries. Not all countries have easy or accessible public transit. And even if they do, it might not be like from where you staying to where you want to go. So please, that you must do your
Well,
research on that as
in some
well.
countries, the public transit has rules about how much luggage you're actually even allowed to bring with you on that public transit. So if you do end up being one of those people that has a lot of luggage, you might have to get a taxi or a chauffeur no matter what because you can't bring that.
Now, here's the thing, because Sam and I have done this, like taking our luggage from the airport to the city or to our hotel. It's possible, but it's not easy. So that's another thing to keep
Especially
in
when
mind.
escalators break and you have to go down
Yeah,
3 or 4
I
flights
just
of
carried.
stairs.
I just sat there and looked really sad, and some guy came up to me.
I was
So
ready to just kick mine down. It's a hard case. I was like, "It'll survive."
you're way taller than me, but if I pick up a luggage, I can't like straight arm it because it touches the ground. So I have to pick up luggage, and I
Yep.
can't do that on both. So
No, no.
things to keep in mind is like, how easy is it to move your stuff when you pack for the airport. Keep everything as contained as possible. Do not pack your luggage and then a plastic bag of this and then your backpack of that, and da, 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 da. Keep everything inside, like one or two pieces and a back,
Mhm.
whatever. Like, you don't want to be fumbling with all this stuff. If your props and stuff can't fit in your bag, don't bring it.
And then
Like,
maybe bring it they have actually, like, suspension like, you know how, contractors have, like, those belts? They have
mm,
those for luggage too, so if you know you're gonna go somewhere that's not very accessible and your luggage isn't too heavy for you to put into, a backpack form, you can create this little
mm,
like, pop-up backpack to carry temporarily. It's like it's like a web satchel that you throw it in, and it's not
I
meant
see
to
what
be
you're saying.
long term, but it's meant to be short term while you're
Yeah.
passing through difficult terrain.
A couple other things to make it easy to move with your suitcases are there's like, they make straps that you can attach to like a bigger suitcase, so you can attach
Mhm.
a smaller suitcase on top of it so you can pull it. Suitcases that are hard sided are easier to maneuver. They just are,
Yep.
like when you're moving around. Ones that have wheels that go all directions, perfect if you can get them that way, because then you can just like push it to the side and you're not even like carrying any weight on you. Get accessories that attach to the suitcase handle, like your cup holders and everything. Fanny packs. Bring extra like reusable bags in
Mhm.
case something breaks. In case you want to buy snacks, so you can just carry it on with you. You can just throw it in a reusable bag or whatever. These are all, like, no one really thinks about the transportation from the airport to your accommodation. Um, it can
Yeah,
be very deceiving. It can be very, very deceiving. Like, oh, we just get on the train and we do this and we do that. Well, guess what? That train's full of commuters and you've got two suitcases to squeeze on.
and
So,
sometimes the train, has their stop adjusted, and all of a sudden, you end up half a mile from the hotel when you used to be dropped off right in front of it, so construction happens too to surprise you, and you end up at the state city. You're like, I've come here for years. When did this change?
And then like when we did Seattle SakuraCon, we were going uphill with our suitcases. I was like, oh my God. The only thing that was saving me from that was knowing that we'll be going downhill when we
It
return.
was only a 10-minute walk too, but it was 10 minutes at a really
10
steep, like a
minutes.
45-degree incline. Yeah.
Yes. So be prepared for these things too. Have a little bit of extra cushion in your budget in case you're like, I'm just getting an Uber. Like that
Yeah.
might save your sanity. So
Yeah.
really, really important things to consider. If you're gonna rent a car, that's more research. You might need special driver's licenses. You might
Yeah.
need this, you might need that. You might be driving on the other side of the road. So many things to keep an eye on for international travel alone. Adding cosplay on top of it, a whole new beast. So
Yep.
all we can say is like plan far ahead in advance. I mean, if someone's like, hey, let's go to Australia, and it's less than 3 months away, I would probably say nah,
No.
unless you've been before and you're a very experienced traveler. If it's your first time, I'd be like, maybe next year. Let's plan for next year. Just don't stress yourself out. A great experience, yeah. I mean, that's something that's like, whoa, I've never been to Australia, I want to go, but you want to make it enjoyable and not stressful. So be safe
Yep.
and do it next year.
And then the final thing to consider when you are traveling internationally, for instance, like I travel to Canada, right? I can drink the tap water there. It's okay. But there's some nations where your body's not adapted to the bacteria or the things that live inside the water because everyone is different, right? So pay attention to what you can eat and drink out there. That might increase your budget as well.
Yeah.
If you have special dietary needs and you are a guest, make sure the coordinator knows. If you have special dietary needs and you're traveling for fun, make sure you do research in advance to see where you can acquire food from, because there's not a lot of countries that are as inclusive when it comes to dietary restrictions as like the US and Canada. So make sure you're aware of that. But there's also other countries where the food doesn't have the same pesticides or other things that happen here, so you might actually feel better out there too. But make sure you're aware of what those are, and if you do have like necessarily, I mean, I know someone that they saved up some of their money so that they could hire a personal chef during the time there to make sure that they would not get sick, because
Sounds
they like if they were the kind of person that their allergies were so severe they'd end up in the hospital.
good.
So just make sure that you're aware of your physical being as well.
So I would say the only place I would drink the tap water is in some places in Europe. Like in Italy, like they still have these public fountains with pure, beautiful, crystal clear, clean water. They've been having plumbing for a long time and they know how to maintain it. There's other countries where they don't have great plumbing and they don't maintain it. I would not drink them. Even like I was born in the Philippines, right? I still would not drink the tap water in
Yeah.
the Philippines because
I
my body
bring
is not used to it.
I bring a Brita water bottle. So if you can't afford it, they have those Brita bottles that you fill up and there's a filter and
Yeah,
the
they do have
straw,
portable filters. Yeah,
and it drinks, you drink through that filter, right? So
that's
you
a
also
great
have, they have
idea.
tablets you can put in water too if you're not sure.
Now, even ice, when you get drinks, if you buy a Coke, don't get it with a glass of ice because that's
Mm-mm.
still water. That's still the same water.
Or
A
you'll
lot
end
of
up like me where you have E. coli in one kidney and salmonella in the other because someone didn't clean their ice.
that sounds like a total nightmare.
Yeah, double
Okay.
polynephritis. It's great.
Well, okay, so we're kind of coming to the end here. Matt, thank you so much. He says, "Hey friends, having traveled with both these ladies, listen up while both first. Oh, Thermo is great at finding deals and setting up game plans. Jinx knows her way around food, people, and cosplay. Way to bring the specialty to the table. We are always available to talk about travel. I love talking about travel. Like that is my other love other than cosplay. I welcome, you can message me anytime asking about whatever. And I still have a lot of international cons on my list. So, and Thermo, I'm trying to get her to go to Japan with me next year. Hope you didn't forget that. We won't be cosplaying, but it'll be fun. So yeah,
I
so
am
we love
really worried about how tall I am. I've been doing research on everything. I'm gonna be so squished everywhere I
but we
go.
love to hear you
I'm
guys.
5'10".
Yeah, Sam, yeah, Thermo's pretty tough. But we'd love to hear from you guys, especially if you're not in the US. We'd love to hear about your events. And maybe we can even like make a plan to go. Like Thermo and I are always like down to travel. So we'd love to hear your guys' feedback. If you liked the show, if you like the tips, and if you have any other questions on traveling, let us know. Message us on the Cost Talk Live, Instagram, Facebook, website, whatever. So we're gonna wrap it up here. You can find me on socials at the Jinx Cosplay. I have Instagram, Facebook, That's it so far. I'm on a break. I'm actually on a break, but I'm back right now. And my website, jinxcosplay.com.
Yeah, and I'm on a social media break until August 1st, just because I'm working on my house is going through. You moved, and I'm building a bunch of furniture.
Yeah, I love
So I'm going through some life changes right now. Um, yeah, 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 yeah. But no, it's so. Oh no, it didn't send. Why didn't it send it? You know, whatever. I'll
it says
resend it.
Cost Talk dash live.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, Cos Talk Live. Here you go. Everybody see it. That's where you can find us.
Cost Talk dash live, and we're Cost Talk Live at on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitch. And also, big shout out to Age of Radio. So Age of Radio has been partnering with us. We got some really cool stuff coming up with them in the future. Thanks so much, Age of Radio viewers, for tuning in. And what we
Yep.
got coming up next?
So our next stream is going to be on July 30th at 6 p.m. We're all going to get in costume and we're going to play some kind of video game. And we're going to see what we're so far. Among Us seems to be winning, so it's either going to be
There's
Among
another
Us.
fun one I haven't put in the chat, but I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
My cousin just showed it to me. It's another mobile game, but we'll figure it out.
Well, we have it can't be mobile. It has to be something that we can stream. That's the problem.
I think it might be on desktop. I'll double check.
Okay.
I'll double check if it's on Steam.
I can connect an Xbox to StreamYard, and I can connect Steam to StreamYard. I haven't tried mobile. There might be some way I could figure it out.
It also depends on who's joining, because we might be able to, like, if it's you, me, and like Insomnimat, we could probably like Overwatch or something. Maybe.
I have to reinstall that.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
No, it won't take me long. I just need to know in advance. But yeah, next what is it? So it's the 30th. So in like 9 days, it's a Tuesday night. We're gonna do gaming, and we're planning on doing that once a month, just getting in costume and essentially as our character playing the game. So basically, I have to figure out what character I want to be.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just be Beast Boy and be like, man, guys, this is great.
We can play Marvel vs. Capcom, because then I can be Morgan. Ooh, and you can. Do you have a Cammy or? Oh, you can do a Marvel character, Beast.
Yeah.
Wait.
I'll just have to find something that's available. So we'll figure it out. We'll start small with our games. Just because we all play different systems. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, and we'll have August stream schedule up soon.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.